Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial series on preparing qualitative data for presentations. I thought I should make this introductory video just to outline, first of all, to outline what's actually going to be covered in the tutorial series, but also to clarify a few points, answer a few questions that you might have. And the big question that you're likely to have, I think, coming into this is, well, who are you? Who are you to tell me how to prepare qualitative data for presentations? Well, I'm a conversation analyst by background, and over the past few years, I've been working on a project where we've been working with some quite sensitive medical interaction data. And we've had to present this data in a variety of different settings, both academic, so conferences and data sessions, but also non-academic, so things like advisory board meetings, for example. And in the course of preparing the data, because the data is so sensitive and because those settings are so varied, in the course of preparing data to present in those settings, I've had to do various forms of preparation. I've had to do various things to the data before presenting it. And along the way, I've picked up some tips and tricks that they work for me anyway. I'm not going to say that these are necessarily the best ways of doing these things, but they've worked for me, and I thought that I should share the wisdom. So, with that out of the way, what are we actually going to cover in this tutorial series? Well, in the first video, we're going to talk about software, and I'll start out because this tutorial series is going to focus almost exclusively on one piece of software, and that software is called Shotcut, as you can see there. And so I'll start out in this first video just by talking about Shotcut, talk about why I've chosen to focus on Shotcut for the series, and also talking about how you can get Shotcut. So that'll be that first part, and then we'll move on to talking about how you actually get your video into Shotcut so that it's ready to be edited. So how do you do that? And as you can see, that's a fairly short video, so fairly simple thing to do, but hey, this is a step-by-step tutorial, and that is one of the steps. And then in the third section of the software part, we're going to be talking about how you can, first of all, how you can save a project file in Shotcut as you're working on it, and then when you're done working on it, how you can actually export your file so that it becomes a usable video that you can go away and present. So how do you do that? And then in part two, we're going to move on to talk about audio anonymization, and we'll start out by talking about, because what we're going to be, this is the one part of the tutorial series that won't be focusing on Shotcut that much. Instead, we'll be focusing on Audacity, which is an audio editor that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But we'll be focusing on Audacity, but to edit audio in Audacity, we need to detach it from the video. So this first part, 2.1 there, will be focusing on how we can do that using Shotcut. And then once we've actually got the audio into Audacity, we'll be talking about, well, how do we change the pitch? Because changing the pitch, that's a classic way of doing anonymization, both within CA and outside CA. So bringing the pitch of someone's voice down so that their voice doesn't sound identifiable. So how can we do that in Audacity? So I'll be talking about that there. Then in 2.3 there, I'll be talking about how you can actually mask a specific part of an audio track, completely obscure it. And that's useful if, for example, one of your participants says a place or a name or something else that you don't want your audience to be hearing. And then once we've done all the anonymization, I'll then be showing you how to actually reattach the audio to the video. Again, going back to Shotcut and actually bringing the audio back in, your anonymized audio track back in. So that's part two. In part three, we'll be talking about video anonymization, and we'll start out by talking about how you can add a sketch filter to your videos. And adding a sketch filter, that means essentially turning the video into a cartoon-like image, and in doing so, obscuring the features of the participants in the video. So we'll be talking about how you can do that. And then we'll be talking about how you can actually mask a portion of the screen. So for example, if you wanted to cover up somebody's face, or if there was a logo in view that would make the setting in which you'd recorded the video identifiable, how you can do that. And you'll notice that is quite a long video, and that's because it's not a difficult process, but it can be quite a fiddly process. So it takes a little while just to show how it's done. But I think once you've got it down, it's fairly straightforward. Then we'll move on to part four to talk about making clips. So talk about how you can actually, you've got your raw qualitative data, so how do you actually extract the clips from that you want to present? And I'll start out by talking about how you can just extract one clip. So very, very simple. Let's say you're going to a data session, you only want to take one clip along, how you can do that. Then I'll move on to talk about extracting multiple clips, and I'll be talking there about how you can extract multiple separate clips. So for example, if you were going to a conference and you wanted to have one clip on one slide, one clip on the other slide, and they were entirely separate and you wanted to work on them entirely separately, how can you do that form of extracting? And then I'll be talking about extracting joined clips, and what I mean by that is, let's say you have two clips that are related, but there's stuff in between those two clips that isn't really of interest. So what I'm going to be talking about there is how you can actually edit two related clips that didn't necessarily occur in the video together, but how you can actually edit them together in Shotcut. And then in part 5, the final part, I'm going to be talking about subtitling. And I'll start out by talking about how you can add basic subtitles, so the classic form of subtitles where the subtitles are just dancing along the bottom of the screen there, so I'll talk about that. And much like the masking function in the video anonymization videos, that is, as you can see, it's 14 minutes long. That is, again, it's quite a fiddly process, but it's not really a difficult one once you get to grips with it. But I've set aside quite a bit of time there just to fully explain how that works. And then in 5.2, I'm going to move on and talk about advanced subtitling settings that you can use in Shotcut. Things like, for example, giving each of your participants their own subtitle track. I'll be talking about that. I'll also be talking about moving the subtitles around and placing them in different areas of the screen. And then in 5.3, I'm going to round out the tutorial series by talking briefly about how you can, one way in which you might do Jeffersonian subtitles within Shotcut. It's quite experimental, this, and it was something that I just found, it was something that I experimented with when I was playing around with Shotcut, and I thought, this seems to kind of work. So I thought that I should include it here just as an illustration of one possible way in which you could do Jeffersonian subtitles. Okay, so that's what the tutorial series is going to cover, and you'll notice that it's arranged in what I would say is a logical order, and I think that you can, if you wanted to, if you had a piece of data that you wanted to do all of these things to, you could start out in the first video and you could go step by step, because I'm going to be working throughout the tutorial series with a piece of sample data, so you should be able to work through it with me, following on step by step. But I've also designed it in a way that I've also designed it so that this whole series is fairly modular as well. So if there's only one specific aspect that you're interested in, you should be able to dip in there and do those things without having to worry necessarily about doing any of the other things. The only video that I would recommend that you watch, no matter what you're doing, unless you're already familiar with Shotcut, but I would recommend watching the software video, because the software video, that's going to outline Shotcut, that's going to just talk about the basic settings in Shotcut, and that's also of course going to show you how to export your video in Shotcut. So if you wanted to just dip in and do one thing, you would then need to know how to export it when you finish doing that one thing. So that's pretty much everything, except I do want to just make a few more points here at the end. The first one is a warning, if you like, and it's the sort of warning that you would have to issue at the beginning of any tutorial series of this nature, and any tutorial series where you were working with software and files and so on. And it's the classic warning, which is save often, and I can't emphasize that enough. Save often. You do not want to be working on something for hours and hours and hours and then find out that you've lost it. So save often. It's the classic piece of advice, but I would just emphasize that there. And one other thing here at the end, if you have any questions about the tutorial series, or you have any feedback that you would like to give about the tutorial series, you can get in touch with darkive@gmail.com, and obviously it's there on the screen. And I think that's everything, so I'll see you in the next video where we're going to be talking about software. Bye bye for now.